Welcome to Dark Maga Part 2. In Part 1, I exposed how Silicon Valley's tech bros have funneled millions and millions of dollars into Trump's first campaign and now his second campaign, and I left off talking about Peter Thiel. So I want to dissect more of his global influence, his proteges, and the chilling plan that these guys are advancing right now. So Peter Thiel isn't just another rich donor. He's what I like to call the ringleader of the PayPal mafia, which, as you guys know, is a clique of ex-PayPal founders who now dominate Silicon Valley and beyond. They funded things like Tesla, led by Elon Musk, LinkedIn, led by Reid Hoffman, Palantir, which is Thiel's own creation, YouTube with Steve Chan, OpenAI with Sam Altman, SpaceX, Yelp, and many more. Now, this is no coincidence. It's a strategic network that was designed to control tech, data, and political power. And Thiel actually used his PayPal fortune to become Facebook's first major outside investor, which actually gave him a huge stake in Meta's propaganda machine. And then later, he poured billions of dollars into Palantir, which is a company that's so dangerous, it's the linchpin of Orange Cheeto Man's authoritarian ambitions. Palantir is basically Big Brother software. It's not just another tech company, it's a mass surveillance tool that's sold to governments and corporations. So let's break it down. It's in three different parts. Palantir Gotham is actually used by US intelligence and military to track terrorists, hack into global communications, and plan drone strikes. Think of it as a real-time war dashboard that maps enemies or anybody labeled as a threat. The second piece is Palantir Foundry, and it's used by corporations like Merck and Airbus and Morgan Stanley, and it's used to mine data on employees, customers, and supply chains. It predicts your behavior, it knows what you're going to buy, where you're going to go, and even how you're going to vote. And then the third part is Palantir Apollo, which is a delivery system that basically updates Palantir's software everywhere all at once. So imagine if a dictator could instantly push propaganda or censorship rules to every phone, computer, and government database globally. Now, the reason this matters so much under the Orange Cheeto Man's administration is because he could use Palantir to target anybody that he doesn't agree with. So activists and journalists, or liberals that he flags as domestic extremists using biased algorithms, right? He could rig elections because he could manipulate voter rolls, and he could gerrymander districts and suppress turnout in real time. Also, he would have permanent surveillance. So he would have a national security state where every text, purchase, or protest sign could tie directly back to you. Now, back in 2016, Peter Thiel donated $1.5 million to Trump, and he basically bought a seat at the table with it because in exchange, he got an office in Trump Tower so that he can lobby the president directly, and he had key allies placed in Trump's administration, like Michael Kratsiosas, who was the chief technology officer, and Michael Anton, the man who wrote the essay that brainwashed the GOP into embracing tyranny. His essay was called the Flight 93 Election. Now, this essay basically compared voting for the Orange Cheeto Man to storming a hijacked plane. His argument was that the Democrats are terrorists and electing Hillary Clinton would mean certain unaliving for America. The key lies were that the liberals want to erase white tea culture and that the Orange Cheeto Man is the only way to stop civil war. So this essay became the Republican Bible. It justified ignoring Cheeto Man's corruption, cruelty, and incompetence because the other side was worse. And after Cheeto Man tried to overturn the 2020 election, Anton just doubled down and he claimed that the Democrats would have done the same. And this apocalyptic fear-mongering is why Republicans still worship Cheeto Man because they've been trained to see every election as this existential war. Now, Thiel and his puppet, J.D. Vance, are disciples of Curtis Yarvin's philosophies, which I mentioned in part 1. If you haven't seen it, go see that so that you can understand what I'm talking about here. But he's basically a far-right blogger who wants to replace democracy with a corporate dictatorship. And he wrote a very chilling essay called The Butterfly Revolution. And it's basically a 7-step plan to overthrow the U.S. government, and it parallels perfectly with Project 2025. So now let's talk about how this butterfly revolution lays out its playbook. Step 1. Campaign on autocracy. Sell dictatorship as fixing a broken system.
In the late Republican period, if we're going to push back against it, we have to get pretty wild and pretty far out there and go in directions that a lot of conservatives right now are uncomfortable with.
We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
Part 2, purge the bureaucracy. Fire every federal worker. Replace them with Maga loyalists using a database of pre-vetted extremists.
RAGE stands for retire all government employees.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state.
Part number 3, ignore the courts. Exploit Cheeto Man's new presidential immunity to defy judges and prosecutors.
This decision almost certainly means that there are virtually no limits on what the president can do, because the power of the office will no longer be constrained by the law, even including the Supreme Court of the United States. The only limits will be self-imposed by the president alone.
Step number 4, take over Congress. Handpick candidates for every seat. Loyalty to Cheeto Man, not voters, is the only requirement.
Congressmen elected, and we got to get the senators elected, because we can take the Senate pretty easily. And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
Step 5, create a national police force. Federalize the National Guard and local police into a presidential army to crush protests. Step 6, silence the media and academic institutions. Shut down all big media sources like CNN and MSNBC and New York Times, and then also shut down schools like Harvard, and then basically just replace them with propaganda outlets.
So much of what we want to do in this movement in this country, I think, are fundamentally dependent on going through a set of very hostile institutions, specifically the universities, which control the knowledge in our society, which control what we call truth and what we call falsity, that provides research that gives credibility to some of the most ridiculous ideas that exist in our country. And so I think if any of us want to do the things that we want to do for our country and for the people who live in it, we have to honestly and aggressively attack the universities in this country.
And the last step, step 7, is to turn out your people, to get your supporters to go out to the streets and rally for you, which basically means mobilize MAGA street militias. That's right. Use violence like the January 6th insurrection to intimidate opponents, because patriots must defend the regime.
Walk down to the Capitol, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength.
Now, like I said, this isn't fiction. This is Project 2025. Yarvin's plan is basically identical to the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025, which is, you know, the Orange Cheeto Man's 900-page blueprint for a dictatorship. So they both share the same goal, dismantling the administrative state to let billionaires and corporations rule without oversight. But here's the twist. You know, guys like Musk or Peter Thiel and all of the other Silicon Valley tech bros, they're not religious people. They don't care about AB rights or prayer in schools. Their allegiance with groups like the Heritage Foundation is purely transactional. What they actually want is no regulations. They want to be able to mine data and exploit workers and pollute freely. They want to have no taxes, right? They want to be able to hoard wealth while defunding schools and healthcare for the regular people. And they want network states, which are these private cities that I talked about in part 1, where basically billionaires make all the rules, they police the borders, and they live like kings, untouched by democracy. Now, I want you guys to understand that JD Vance isn't just, you know, Orange Cheeto Man's VP. He's actually Thiel's like handpicked heir to the throne, because Thiel bankrolled Vance's Senate campaign, and Vance repays him by pushing Yarvin's ideas in podcasts and speeches, praising Cheeto Man's immunity ruling, calling it a step towards accountability, parroting Yarvin's term red pill, which is a reference to brainwashing followers into accepting authoritarianism as truth. And this is really scary. It's scary because Orange Cheeto Man's team knows that he might not survive a full term, and Vance is being groomed to continue the butterfly revolution into 2028 and beyond. And he's the bridge between Silicon Valley's wealth and MAGA's rage. He's a smiling populist who will automate censorship, privatize democracy, and call it freedom. I hope you realize that what's happening in the States right now is a hostile takeover by a coalition of neo-fascists and tech oligarchs. And what is going to stop Cheeto Man from using Palantir's AI to flag you for disloyalty if you protest or unionize or criticize the regime? And Project 2025 loyalists are going to erase reproductive rights. They're going to roll back child labor laws. They're going to ban woke books. And Yarvin's butterfly revolution will replace Congress with Cheeto Man loyalists and cronies and yes men, and the Constitution with a CEO style like terms of service type of thing where people have no rights and the only privileges they get are only granted by your corporate overlords. This is the end game, people. A world where Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and JD Vance make the rules, where algorithms enforce compliance, where democracy is a relic in a museum next to the last copy of the Constitution shredded and called obsolete. You guys in the States have a short window of time before all of this becomes your everyday reality. So you need to get out there right now while you still can and fight like hell, because every single second at this point counts. And it counts for the rest of the world that's watching as well, because we're all going to be affected by this. It's coming for all of us.